Finally, a Twin Otter that isn't falling apart when you take it out of the box. Hey there, I'm John. This is Two Brothers RC, and this is the Avios Twin Otter 1.6 meter. It's a bush plane, it's floaty, and it's fun. Hobby King sent this bird over so we can run it through the no patent pending Two Brothers review system, so let's see how it stacks up using the metrics for bush planes. Starting off with the agility section, the Twin Otter handles really well in the air. It feels docile on the sticks, but it still has plenty of authority to do really neat maneuvers. Max out the control throws and you won't have any issues doing a tumble to knife edge spin instantly. The Twin Otter naturally has a downward pointing thrust line caused by how the motors are mounted to the wing. Other Twin Otters have a similar thrust line, like the E-flite and Flex Twin Otters. This has almost no effect on the plane until you stall it or get it really slow. Then it can simply pitch down until it crashes if you don't let off the throttle. If you ever feel a nosedive coming that you can't pull out of, chop the power, then throttle back up smoothly as you pull out of it. The thrust line is the issue. This is endemic to Twin Otters. It's not a design flaw, it's just how the plane is. Kinda like how the SR-71 has a nasty stall no matter what scale you find it in. So with that in mind, let's see how it handles compared to our agility metrics. And we start off by asking if it can be flown with a neutral center of gravity. For those of you who don't know, this is super important because you need tail authority with a bush plane, and it makes it much easier to control in general. The answer to this question is absolutely. I had no issues with the center of gravity flying on SMC 2800 and 2400 high voltage packs, passing our first checkpoint. You might think that those batteries sound small for this plane, but trust me, they're not. You'll see why in the flight time section coming up. Does it take off and land without struggling? Yeah, it most certainly does. At its heart, the Twin Otter is a bush plane. While it has a long, thin wing, it has a lot of wing area and it can take off easily with the standard slotted flaps that it comes equipped with. If you fly it on my setup and split the aileron so that you can have full span flaps just like its big sister, takeoffs become faster, landings become slower, and oddly, the plane is still well behaved even with the entire trailing edge of the wing being a flap. Flaps reduce the angle of attack at which you stall. Full span flaps reduce that critical angle of attack even more. Yet, the Twin Otter can actually float around with the elevator pegged with full span flaps.
I'm holding the elevator. Dude, it's hovering. It's hovering. Just in place. It's not moving. It's like going 3 miles an hour. Look at that. It shouldn't be doing that.
That is some black magic f***ery right there, passing our second checkpoint. And it passes the low 1G stall speed checkpoint because I'm literally just pegging the elevator and it's still flying. Crazy. And this applies even if you clean up the wing and fly without flaps. It'll float around in a Harrier. It does Harriers better with the tail fences installed, but they're push-on fences, as in, don't expect them to stick to the tail. I know the manual said that they'll stay put from air pressure alone, but not if you fly the way that I do.
There's the wing drop.
It had something pop off?
It was the little tail fences on it.
So just glue them in place. They look better anyhow. Does it have enough thrust for bush flying? Well, it can hover without any mods, so yeah, it's got enough thrust to do basically anything you want. Should you fly it in the woods? Probably not, but I'd be surprised if it didn't fly in a relatively confined area, so Liz and I took it to a more confined spot and gave it a shot. We usually float fly here, but flying with wheels limits our takeoffs and landings to a narrow strip of grass with zero margin of error if mistakes happen, passing our next checkpoint. If you're going to bush fly this plane, you can actually fly it with full span flaps active the entire time while you're aggressively maneuvering it to get it into the landing pattern. This plane is so docile and bush maneuvering that it almost feels like a beginner airplane. The wing load is super low, letting you basically get away with stuff that you normally can't get away with at all. I tried to make it bite with full span flaps, and loading up the wings didn't result in a hard stall. It's nuts. If you're gonna fly in spots like this, just make sure that your confidence matches your stick skills, because while it isn't hard to fly in confined areas, if your anxiety spikes while you're flying, you'll probably make a bad decision and you may end up wrecking. Work on your confidence and you'll have zero issues. I'm thoroughly impressed with how it handles this kind of area. While yes, you could try flying it in a forest, I do think that most RC pilots will agree that this is about as reasonable a location as you can expect the average bush pilot to consider flying from successfully. Stall recovery seemed pretty easy too. Just let off the elevator, and if you're still pitching down, reduce throttle to idle, let the wings gain some airspeed, then throttle up smoothly as you gently pull the elevator again. Easy peasy, though stall recovery is something that does take practice, so get some of that practice in and test it for yourself high up in the air. Just remember, the downward thrust line causes some weird recovery in a stall, so just remember that throttle alone can't save you in a stall with this plane. The Twin Otter passes all of our bush plane agility metrics with a 5 out of 5. Moving on to flight time, remember when I said that the SMC 2400s and 2800s sound small for this plane? They're not. The 2800s consistently got me over 7 minutes of spirited 3D and aggressive aerobatic flight. If you wanted to be more gentle to the plane, you could easily get over 10 minutes floating around. I didn't have any Turnigy batteries from Hobby King to fly this plane with, so I stuck with the SMC packs that I had already. If you were to fly Turnigy packs though, I'd recommend flying on the 4-cell 3000mAh batteries linked below. They're slightly heavier than the SMC 2800 and 2900 packs, but they're in the same ballpark for price. You can't really go wrong with either battery. The Twin Otter flies exceptionally well on a light pack, and you don't give up any noticeable amount of flight time to do it. This is a pretty outstanding bird so far. Let's see if it holds up as we move into landing gear, fit and finish, and avionics and lighting. Moving on to landing gear, the Twin Otter comes with oversized bush wheels and a nose wheel system that's set up with a servo saver. I actually didn't like this very much because it was weird. Sometimes the nose wheel would work, other times it didn't, as you can see on the bench here, and rotating the wheel inside of the servo saver kinda made it work again. And sometimes it felt like it was just drifting around on the grass of its own volition. It's a weird system. I think Hobby King could easily stand to lose this servo saver setup because I've flown many other planes on rough terrain, and I've never actually had a steering servo go bad on me. So while I do appreciate why they did this, I don't think that it's actually necessary at all. But enough of my editorializing, let's see how it stacks up to the landing gear review metrics. First, the wheels are obviously functional, so they pass here. They're not hard either. While they are admittedly harder than I would prefer them to be, they're soft enough that they pass. They're definitely not Freewing or FMS style Fred Flintstone looking ass boulders carved into the shape of a wheel, so it's nice that more companies are listening to me complain about this and making improvements. I can't actually say it's happening because of me, but I will anyway, because you can't prove that it wasn't because of my complaining. QED. The nose wheel is on a suspension system. The main wheels are not. They rely purely on the reflex of the gear struts and the softness of the wheels to dampen impacts. This is true to scale for the Twin Otter, so it passes again. Do the wheels cause bouncing? Not that I could see. I had rough landings at some points, and it didn't want to bounce around like some other planes that I've flown off of grass, passing yet again. And as far as I can tell, the gear do require low maintenance. I'm not in the business of purposely flying it poorly just to say the gear are bad, but if it didn't hold up to landings the way an airplane should be landed, then you'd definitely be hearing me ding it here. The Twin Otter passes yet again with a 5 out of 5. Let's see if it keeps this momentum going into the fit and finish and avionics and lighting sections. Before we do that, though, I do need to mention that the Twin Otter comes with floats. These are actually the best looking floats that I think I've ever seen on a model airplane, and they come with decals pre-applied by the factory. It's pretty impressive actually, because most float sets that I own are just pure white with literally nothing else on them. No decals, no paint, no nothing. Anytime you've ever seen paint on my floats or decals on them, I had to do it myself. This is a very welcome change of pace. Here's hoping that Horizon Hobby and FMS can improve their float sets a little and maybe start selling them pre-applied with, I don't know, a metallic paint job to compete in this regard. Either way, do be careful flying with floats. The plane does have more pitch aggressiveness with them installed, and if you like hovering, I would caution you to be wary of the thrust line. It's magnified more on floats, and this hover I was doing ended abruptly when it decided to nose down out of it on its own. Twin Otters really be doing that. My Flex has done it twice now, and both times were a crash. Fit and finish is where we see some compromises in the overall scoring of the plane, but not much. The control surfaces are large, which is critical to having control for bush flying, and the foam wasn't damaged out of the box. In fact, it looked really nice overall on the walkthrough inspection that Liz made, with plenty of intricate foam detail present on the model, passing both of our first two checkpoints. When we move into the gapless or plastic hinge check, we find that the rudder is gapless hinged, the elevator is plastic hinged, the flaps are slotted with plastic hinges, and the ailerons are foam hinged. You were so close here, Hobby King. It's not a huge problem because you can easily rehinge the ailerons yourself, and they didn't show any signs of wear with aggressive flying that I was putting them through. I just don't think that you should need to fix them at all. But since most of the hinges are high quality and only the ailerons are foam, I'll give it a pass here. The decals are a mix. They're decals and they're stickers. The stickers continue doing what stickers do best, which is covering up the intricate foam detail in the model. Most of them stuck well enough except for the white stickers on the long snoot that I flew with. Those would have stuck, except that whoever installed them needed to make a couple of slices into the sticker material to actually let it sit down on the foam. That isn't a fault of the sticker itself, just a fault in how it was applied to the model. Either way, it fails the decal checkpoint, but it passes the "do these things actually stick to the plane" checkpoint, since almost all of them were flawless, giving the Twin Otter a 4 out of 5. And no, I didn't miss the stickers being misaligned on the nose. I don't know if this is actually endemic to the production of the plane or if it's just a one-off issue. I tend to not pick out things like this because it's usually a one-off issue, but I did see some reports on RC groups that their stickers weren't aligned either. So, not trying to gloss over it, just trying to be fair to Hobby King and any other manufacturer by not needlessly criticizing them. Moving on to our final section, avionics and lighting, the Twin Otter ships with metal-geared servos. They're relatively precise compared to other models that I've flown. They seem strong, and they had no issues with me throwing this thing around in the sky, passing our first checkpoint. I noticed no issues with the ESCs overheating. They didn't complain even when I hovered for like 2 straight minutes, trying and failing to catch the damn plane because it's tricky to hover sometimes. The lighting system does function and it looks correct to me, and it's quite nice actually. And the motor mounts seemed well designed, though the reason for even having a motor mount check in this system is so that we can see if it's easy to replace them in a crash. Though, if you end up crashing this plane and messing up the motor mounts, you've probably got bigger issues to worry about than just the mounts themselves, with how far in and up they are on the airframe. The Twin Otter earns a 5 out of 5 in our avionics and lighting review, which gives the Twin Otter a grand total of 24 out of 25. It's not perfect, but it's really nice. And honestly, if you're the goofy type who enjoys flying where you shouldn't, the super low wing loading of this plane and super docile behavior with full span flaps lends itself to that kind of flying style. It's rare when I actually get to fly a plane confidently while yanking it around slowly like this. I'm not going to harp endlessly about the virtues of cubic wing loading, but I will say it's really nice to have something that floats easily for a change. On to the setup of this plane, you can check out Brian Phillips on YouTube, who, as usual, went super in-depth on unboxing and radio setup. I simply just don't have the time to do either of those things this week, and Brian did cover it quite in-depth for you. The only difference between our setups is that I'm using full span flaps, and you can get the setup file that I'm using from the Two Brothers Discord server so that you don't have to program differential thrust, full span flaps, or a steerable nose wheel yourself. Hop into either the props or tech and setup channel and feel free to ask questions, or grab the radio setup for Spectrum users from the Spectrum Radio Setups channel. Huge thanks goes out to Hobby King for sending this plane in to demo for you guys today, along with a very special thanks to our channel members on screen, including our mega fans Sarasota RC Squadron, Michael Smith, JR Man, and Todd, along with our ultra fans Seahawk92 and TBRC Fan. You guys rock! Coming up next week will be the F-22 tier ranking, facing off all 4 free-wing F-22s, including the 64, 70, 80, and 90mm jets. So, stay tuned, because this one's gonna be fun. See you guys next week.